So we've come out of the room that we were actually wanting to assess, and we've actually drawn a diagram of the floor plan of the room. Now, it doesn't have to be architecturally completely accurate. It just needs to give you a general idea of the room. If you happen to know where north is, this can be useful. But what you then do, using a pendulum, and just doing putting a pendulum into neutral, and then when the energy change is reached, the place where basically you need to make some adjustment, the pendulum will go out of neutral into another swing. And you just simply run your finger along initially the outer area of the room, and where the pendulum starts to swing in a different way, mark a point. And carry on round the outside edge of the area you want to assess and you want to fix, for want of a better phrase, and just checking . We don't have to make any intellectual assessment over these at all. Okay, so if you have a biometer available, it's at this point you would make an assessment of the overall energy of this room before you actually do anything. I don't have one actually to hand, but I know the biometric scale fairly well. And actually, the scale at the moment is actually a reasonable reading of 6,700 on the scale, which is actually it's actually fundamentally a healthy space. But you can see we have picked up a few areas where maybe things need to be adjusted in some way. Now, the easiest way in any situation to adjust energies is placement of crystals. But you could equally do placement of symbols, placement of runes, placement of plants, placement of colour squares. You could do anything to actually change these. So we'll take an assumption, because we're actually doing crystals, that these potentially would be crystal placements. And from experience we know that there are some crystals that are much more useful for doing this sort of energy change than others. Green aventurine, iron pyrites, apophyllite, lapis lazuli are very, very good at doing environmental adjustments, but it could potentially be anything. And so what you basically do would just lock on energetically to one point, and with your pendulum, okay, if we're using a crystal, it's a warm colour, cool colour, green, and yes, greens come up as a yes, so potentially would that be green aventurine, because we've already mentioned it, and yes, that will do the trick. And so you would do this for each point, find out what is actually needed. And if we went through all the rest of the points, we'll take an assumption we've been through all the points, we found out what's needed. And what we could then do is then go back into the space, put the crystals down, leave it 5 or 10 minutes, and then reassess the energy biometrically to find out whether there's been a change. So we go out into the foyer, we put the stones down, we leave it 5 minutes, and the energy change on the biometer would be, let's see, more than 6,000, more than 7,000, more than 8,000, around 8,000, would actually put it up to 8,000, which would make it not just an okay space, would actually make it a healing space to be in. Anything over 6,500 becomes a healing space on the biometric scale. And so you can, interestingly here, we happen to know, if you watch the looking round, is the fact that there is a fuse box here, and here is the Wi-Fi. So it's interesting that it has picked up two areas where there are electrical hotspots. But again, you don't get intellectually upset about that, you just deal with it. Crystal, easily dealt with. I mean, it's somewhere like this, a plant might be where a plant pot. You know, anything greener will actually do it. When you know a little bit more about environmental energies, you might actually be able to assess whether there are any ley lines or any Hartmann or curry nets actually working through this space. But the actual fixing of the space, you don't need to know. All you need to know is what needs to go there. And you use the tools you have available to you. And as crystal therapists, crystals are the easiest tool. But if you don't have crystals, you're doing a space that is away from your normal place of work or access to crystals, then just find out what else in the environment will do the trick. And it may even be, if you know Reiki, it may be Reiki symbol on a piece of paper. It may just be a coloured piece of paper will actually do the trick. Or it may be that the painting on this wall needs changing for something else because it's not actually helping the environment. So, we have some questions.
So with this technique, you're actually going around the walls.
The perimeter, yeah.
With some geopathic energies, they actually may be located in the centre of the room.
Yeah.
Would you need to check for those, or by doing the walls would that actually...
Yeah, if you do the walls first, and assuming the overall energy goes up,
right.
What tends to happen with energies in the centre of the room, if there are a problem, they would stop the energy going up.
Right.
So if you found that you did this, and you still had no change, then it would basically, okay, this area here, there's something else. Yes. And then you could actually go and try and hunt out what the something else is. But again, it's usually we'll find in those situations in the middle of the room, in a carpeted place or a tile place, you're not going to be able to put a crystal, you're not going to be able to necessarily put a plant pot. But what you might want to do is put this diagram in a safe place and actually draw your symbol or put your crystal, cut it off and place it and use it basically as an absent healing mode. And
also by approaching it this way, so it could be environmental energies, man-made energies, whatever. It doesn't matter.
You don't have to have an intellectual understanding of what the problem is. All it is you know how to fix it. Because you can get caught up an awful lot in ley lines, water lines, construction lines, curry lines, Hartmann lines, and get very caught up into the intellectuals of that, whereas all you really need to do is fix it.
Okay. Now in terms of, because this is a public space that we've been working on, there's the whole, if you've got one person living there, do you go and know somebody else, do you need to get permission from both? Or?
Yeah, if it's a private space, I mean like as if say it's just your bedroom, well then that's your space. But if it's a space that's shared with other people, then when you're doing the assessment as well of what's appropriate, you need to take that into account. And obviously, what you then use or where you put it is going to affect things. So a small crystal, you're not going to put in a space where a young child could pick it up or a pet could pick it up. But usually with the checking of the biometrics of the situation, it's good to tell anybody else in the household, but really you're looking to raise the energy of the whole space so that everybody benefits from the healing energy.
And by raising the energy of any space turns it into a healing
Anything
space.
above 6,500 on the biometrics scale is a healing space.
Thank you.
So that's actually interesting. So
Yeah, it is.